To begin with, of course, let us admit one thing. A lot of things which were regarded as free in the past are now seen to be conditioned by external circumstances, and we've become, in that sense, more enlightened, and if you like, more forgiving in an anti-Kantian sort of way. People who are blamed for doing all kinds of things which can now be seen they probably can't help because of bad education or because of terrible social pressures.
But is there a danger of swinging in the other direction too far?
Yes, I would say there was. I would say there was. Nevertheless, if you exaggerate this and make it absolutely total, then you have a picture of totally moldable, malleable men who can be turned into almost anything, which is rather what the 18th century French philosophers believed. And that really does deny any meaning to a very large number of moral terms, which we would then have to shed. We'd have to transform our concepts and language in very drastic ways to meet that. Take, for example, the phrase, serve him right. For someone like Skinner, this is a meaningless phrase. What does it mean, serve him right? A man digs a hole for his enemy to fall into and falls into it himself. People feel some satisfaction about this and say, serve him right, quite right. Poetic justice. Here is a villain who means nothing but harm to a lot of people, and one of the traps which he sets for other people actually catches him. Why do we feel satisfaction at this? Not just at the fact that a bad man has been eliminated. We feel he deserves punishment. The idea of desert is a very obscure idea. If you begin talking about desert, I think you must somewhat abandon the idea of complete determination. Desert means you could have acted otherwise, in which case you would have been all right. But you chose freely to do this, and that's why you don't deserve to be treated in this or that way. Desert implies the possibility of free choice as a central factor, as a central element in human experience. Action as something which is not fully determined.
The problem, though, is that if you have a concept of our being determined, that is the Skinner argument, that is, in fact, we can know, that some all-knowing, omniscient psychiatrist or behavioral therapist can sort of have us taped, that in a way we are undermined, that if society can say, yes, we can help you, we can cure you of all the problems, there is that sense in which you undermine the important ingredient out of which freedom seems to arise, and that is autonomy. Now the question is, in the general notion of human nature, and also in our social institutions, do you think that this concept of autonomy is being lost?
Well, in totalitarian and authoritarian societies, of course. This is really, in a way, stimulated by all the, I don't say stimulated by these doctrines, but the doctrines are symptomatic of an attitude that men are malleable, wholly malleable. That they are made as they are by certain external factors, but that I can interfere with these factors by substituting my own factors. And that I can really turn a human being into practically anything I choose, within certain limits. And this, of course, gives enormous power to the conditioners, and entails a high degree of not only malleability, but makes it possible for people to become victims of, no doubt, ill-intentioned or mad or power-seeking or other power-loving and power-using persons. That's, of course, what Kant protested against. He thought paternalism was a terrible tyranny, even where the paternalist ruler or conditioner is very benevolent, because the implication is you don't understand yourself. I, the psychiatrist, do. I understand both myself and you. You understand neither yourself nor me. You resist because you don't understand. I must therefore somehow break your resistance. I'm kindly, and I don't propose to do this by brutal means, but I shall do it all the same. I know what is good for you and you do not. I shall therefore make you happy whether you want to be happy or not, in the only way in which people can be made happy, which I happen to know because I've studied the subject and I know all the factors involved. When you are happy, when I've finished with you, you will retrospectively be grateful to me for having done to you what at the time you resisted. Now, in the case of children, we do that a little bit. I mean, we send children to school, although they may, of course, resist, because we say they must be taught to be adult. They must be able to cope with the universe. They won't unless I do. And when they've grown up, they will see that I acted rightly. But to treat large populations as if they were childish, as if they were unadult, that is, of course, the case against imperialism. A large number of imperialists were benevolently motivated. They thought, here were these poor natives, here are we, civilized people. We can't listen to what they want. What they want is neither here nor there. It's what we know is good for them. Never mind what they think. This does open the doors to the most fearful tyranny, not less tyrannous, because sometimes it's used by people full of goodwill and full of Skinnerian conviction.
To sum up, then, how do you think that notions like there being a human nature, how do you think these have formulated the ideologies of our time?
Let me make it absolutely plain. I think that rational scientific attitudes are entirely good. That the more we know, the better. That the only way in which we can lead sane and happy, and if you like, moral lives, is by understanding ourselves as well as possible. Anything which makes for self-understanding is a good thing. But of course you can not only misinterpret, you can use scientific data for purposes which some of us would disapprove of. Darwin never preached social Darwinism. Darwin merely formulated a theory according to which certain species survived and certain species didn't, in accordance with certain natural laws. To apply that to human competition and say, devil take the hindmost, the only people who are worth saving are the toughest, the cleverest, and most ruthless, because they are the fittest, is a misapplication of what was a perfectly good biological theory which didn't dictate any particular specific form of behavior. You might say, even if you were Darwin, there are certain forms of life which do not make for survival, but which nevertheless we value. Saintliness, benevolence, disinterestedness, all kinds of extreme purity of heart may expose the people who have it to being crushed and eliminated by the strong, the wicked, and the ruthless. Nevertheless, we wish to support these people so long as it is possible to do so. We wish to organize a society which will prevent the pike from eating the carp. In nature, pike do eat carp, but we will create artificial conditions in which the carp will survive because we're pro-carp. Anyhow, because we think the rights of carp are as good as the rights of pike, and the strong mustn't eat up the weak. This is not incompatible with anything which we regard as being a law of biological survival. The whole doctrine of Huxley, for example, who talked about nature being red in tooth and claw, is we must resist nature, not cooperate with her. That he wanted to deny that nature was benevolent and meant well. He wanted to say nature was a cold, ruthless, cruel affair, so to speak, in which is not interested in individuals. It has no moral content at all. This is what goes on in the world, but to be a human being is to have certain moral ideals, in which case we must resist natural processes in the way in which lions and tigers can't. And therefore, what you call ideology, I think, can be made independent of scientific findings. Although scientific findings furnish the evidence of what you want to do, goals are not provided by science.